Now we'll take the conversation to East Africa, where Kenya's police chief has announced a ban on fresh opposition demonstrations called for on Monday after protests last week degenerated into riots. Inspector General of Police Japhet Kume on Sunday said the demonstrations are illegal and will not be allowed.
He added that his force is ready to keep the peace and would arrest anyone carrying offensive weapons. But veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga, who has called for people to take to the streets on Monday and Thursday against President William Ruto over the high cost of living, remained defiant. Last Monday's demonstrations, which were also not authorized by police, descended into violence, with riots, police firing tear gas and water cannon at people, hurling rocks and setting tires ablaze. It's an unfortunate update that we have there in Kenya, seeing what's happening. We've seen that the deputy president did say that the demonstrations cost $15 million, and it's unfortunate that it has resulted to this. During the campaign of William Ruto, part of what he promised was better living. He promised that he would improve the lot of the ordinary Kenyans, or like he referred to them as the hustlers. It would seem that people are very displeased by what is going on. On the other hand, it would seem that William Ruto has interpreted this to be more of a personal vendetta as opposed to a cry for help, or as opposed to a public defiance due to them being unsatisfied by the way the government is being run. He did say to Raila Odinga that if you have an issue with me, come and let's handle it man to man and leave this, this whole situation aside. But I don't know that he recognizes that there is a great level of displeasure amongst the people of Kenyans as to the cost of living.
So this is the question that I keep asking, is there a level of displeasure because Kenyans generally are frustrated with the economy and the cost of living and all that? Or is this happening because Raila Odinga has been able to, mobilize them and get them on the streets to protest and make the situation seem worse than it possibly is? Has William Ruto also been given enough time to seemingly, fix the situation in Kenya? What I would like to ask, and maybe speak with Kenyans about is really, what was the situation pre-William Ruto and what's the current situation? Have things gotten entirely worse and it looks like there is no hope whatsoever that William Ruto will be able to fix, the situation? I personally, it's not, my personal thoughts are not important, but, it almost seems more like William Ruto is taking advantage, not William Ruto, no, Raila Odinga is taking advantage of his popularity and, of course, trying to force William Ruto's hands somehow, some way. He has spoken extensively about the elections being stolen and about how, he maybe also is hoping that, get to a point where he will be, I don't want to say made president, but he has always mentioned that the elections were stolen, from him. And so this might really just be centered around that. It's not necessarily about the betterment of Kenyans. And also, if Raila Odinga was president, will Kenya be different today?
So those are some of the concerns that have been raised. On the one hand, it might seem personal, but on the other hand, after he's been sworn into office, we've seen an increase in price of food and dietary, I think it's hunger, or so that there's an increase in hunger. There's also updates that there's an electricity hike on the 1st of April. But we're bringing more updates on that, even though he has exited the country to Belgium and Germany. We do hope that this situation is brought under control. But now let's take the conversation away from Kenya to Ghana. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, arrived Sunday in Ghana for the start of a week-long visit to Africa intended to deepen U.S. relationships amid global competition over the continent's future. Now, we see that shortly after touching down, VP Harris said, "We are looking forward to this trip as a further statement of the long and enduring, very important relationship and friendship between the people of the United States and those who live on this continent." Joining us to discuss this and some more is editor and political analyst from Accra, Ghana, Mr. Wilberforce Asare. Good morning, Mr. Asare. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, now, this is not the first time we're seeing high-level visits from 1998, 2008, 2009. We've seen 3 presidents of the United States visit Ghana. But what is particular? Is there anything particular about these visits in terms of the gains? Is there something really to be excited about? Is it just a friendly visit, or is there more to it, judging by the fact that very recently the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, returned from discussing debt restructuring with China? So is there more to this visit than meets the eye?
So, in terms of international travels from officials from the United States, there are always interest that is involved. The United States has its interest above any other country's interest. And so when they visit any country, they come with their interest in their hand. However, in Ghana, we also have interest, and for that matter, in Africa. Currently, what the interest of Ghana is debt relief and ability to revive the economy post the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of the Russia-Ukraine war. And so officials here in Ghana have told us journalists that during the bilateral section that they are going to be having with the U.S. Vice President, what is going to happen is that they are going to table the concerns of Ghana to the United States, asking that they convince their partners in terms of development partners, the Europeans and all that, who have some kind of loans advanced to Ghana, to consider giving us debt relief, because without those debt relief, it's going to be difficult for any African country to revive their economies because of the hit it has taken as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and also the effects of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. And so Ghana's interest is clearly cut. On the side of the United States, we do know that China and Russia have been having huge influence on the African continent. The Americans are concerned about the level of influence that China and Russia are having on the continent. And because of that, they are taking steps to ensure that they catch up with, in terms of the influence that they have on the African continent. And so it is not surprising that in recent time, U.S. heads of state have visited, or U.S. top officials have been visiting the entire African continent. Blinken was in Ethiopia and in Niger recently because of the security concerns in those two countries. The vice president is in Ghana. She will be going to Tanzania and also to Zambia. We are told the president himself will be coming to the African continent. All of this is because the United States has interest. They are concerned about the influence that China is having on the continent, and they want to pick up and make sure that they catch up or overtake China's influence on the African continent. For me, these are the two interests that are competing as far as Kamala Harris' visit to Ghana is concerned.
Oh, well, I mean, so now that it's clear from your analysis that this really has not very much to do with Ghana's interest, but the United States' interest and their need to to push their influence in different parts of the world, including here in Africa, to of course counter China and Russia's influence on the continent. Shouldn't Ghana and of course other African nations be a little wary about these conversations and about these meetings? And if you're seeking debt relief from the United States, it will come at a cost. They're not just going to forgive, whatever it is that Ghana owes just because they are being nice. And so what are the things that, Ghana is willing to part with? And, is Ghana really ready for the cost of these, of this political influence that the United States is seeking?
Well, yes, I think that's a very interesting question that you ask. And the answer I'll give to it is that there are mutual spaces in this relationship. When I say mutual spaces, I'm talking about the fact that even though we in Africa are not as rich as those coming from America or from Europe, there is equally things here in Africa that the people from Europe and from the Americas need. And so we can leverage on the things they need from us so that we can be somewhat at par and bring about a relationship as in, I have something, you need it, you have something, I need it. And so we join forces together and then build a mutual space in terms of the relationship between the two countries. And so it is an issue, I understand, that their interest overrides our interest. They are the superpower, we are not the superpower. But equally, we do have something to offer that they need. And what we have to offer that they need should be what we will leverage on to make sure that we can get some kind of a mutual relationship between the two countries. If you have a country that has the upper hand over you and you are going to them, you don't go to them with your shoulders high. You go to them keeping cool and seeking to get a benefit from them as much as possible. And for me, that's what I think is the issue. We have something to offer. We should be able to leverage on it. You know that our president has been talking about Ghana beyond aid and Africa beyond aid. We need to get to the point where it is more about trade relations, how that we use the resources that we have to trade with these, our development partners, because they need the resources that we have and they do not have the resources that we have. And so it's about how we position ourselves and are able to have a mutual benefit of this kind of relationship. But I will tell you that American interest is always American interest, and they will seek to protect it. Again, if they want to have influence in Africa more than China, they must be ready to invest more than China is investing. We are told that China has invested over $100 billion on the African continent within a very short period of time. So the United States and the other partners should be ready to also do similar investment.
Okay.
Oh, man, I just wanted to mention, when you're talking about Ghana beyond aid or Africa beyond aid, are these sincere?
Right, and a follow-up to that would just be the fact that is there a potential that Ghana would maybe lean more to one country than the other? For the longest time, we know that Ghana has had a foreign policy on positive neutrality. They haven't, rather than lean to the east or the west, they move forward. But is there a potential that this would make them sway in favor of one country over the other?
So it is difficult for Ghana to have a preference in terms of which countries we deal with and which countries we don't deal with. It is very difficult because we are on the disadvantaged side. And so anytime someone is bringing you some form of an advantage, you gravitate towards that person. And so it is not possible for Ghana to say our foreign policy is gravitating towards just China and not the United States or not the United Kingdom or not Germany. What we are doing is that Ghana is trying to make sure that it creates a fair playing field so that all its development partners can come onto the playing field and play and also give support to all of them. So here in Ghana, there are American companies that are thriving, there are Chinese companies that are thriving, there are Japanese companies that are thriving. And for a developing country like ours and like yours in Nigeria, the best bet is to create a clean playing field that everybody can come and play, all the powers. Let them come and play, support everybody, and that will be to the advantage of the country. If we decide to side with one and say that our foreign policy supports only China and not the United States, that will be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, well, Mr. Sari, thank you so much. We, of course, will watch and see how these things turn. It's a sincerity in purpose in some of these meetings that I would always question. Wilberforce Sari, we'll be speaking with you again. Thanks for your time.